Hey folks, so what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be trying to overhaul, rebuild, whatever you want to call this fan. And this fan is out of the heating and air conditioning system on my JCB 260T skid steer. So as you can see, it is quite dirty. The folks who had the machine before I didn't really do a great job on preventative maintenance. So there was quite a lot of dirt in the HVA or HVAC system, in the ducting, in the fan. As you can see, the fan, it drags, makes a lot of noise. As you can see, I spin it. That should spin very freely, and it doesn't. If you can hear that noise, that squeaking noise, that's no good. This thing has 3 speeds, low, medium, and high, and I can turn it all the way up on the highest speed, and it barely wants to spin the fan, and it makes an awful lot of racket. So I don't know if we're going to be able to fix this thing, but I figured it's already basically broke. It's not going to work the way it is, so we might as well try to take it apart, see if we can learn something, and see if we can get it back together and get it working again and not have to buy a new one. All right, so like I said, this is a spow fan. Let's see if we can get that to focus maybe. There we go. Now it's focused. It's made in Italy. There are the corresponding numbers if you're interested. We've got another label here. If you're interested, I'm assuming that this is the probably the number label for the motor control board in there. It was awfully nice of them to include a wiring diagram for the plug. So here we can see what the spades and the wiring harness correspond to. So that's the base, that's the gist, that's the general idea. Now, to try to get this thing going in the machine the other day, I did spray this down with some WD-40 just to see if I could make anything happen in regards to getting it to spin better or getting it to spin smoother. It did not help, so I decided while I had the HVAC system torn down to the extent that I had it, cleaning it, getting it all flushed out, getting the coils and all that cleaned, I would just go ahead and pull this out and see if we could get it going and not have to buy a new one. All right, so the tools that I've got thus far, I've got the old trusty flat blade screwdriver. I've got a T15 Torx. That's the size for these here. And I've got a T10 in case I need it for these little babies right here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get this thing apart and see how difficult it is going to be to take apart, because that's probably going to tell me whether or not this thing can be rebuilt, quote unquote, air quotes, rebuilt or not. So let's see if we can get into this thing. It doesn't look like the axle for the fan is not going all the way through the other end, so it's all kind of self-contained on the one side here. So let's see if we can pop this apart and have any luck at separating the two sides. Okay, so there's a clip here that's a different style than the other 3. Clip here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'm not sure if there's another type of clip under there or not. I guess we'll just see when we get there. I think the first thing I'm going to have to do is deal with this baby right here. I'm guessing that this is a tab It's going to kind of have to be pushed down and pulled out. You can see, you can sort of see right there where the separation line is in the two halves of the molding. Let's see, I may have to go get, probably will have to go get another screwdriver. Oh, no, look at that. It's just coming apart. That was pretty easy. That's much easier than I expected it to. All right, so we've started to get this separated. I think probably this is just going to be a pry up and try not to break the tab sort of thing. And I suspect we're just going to kind of have to work this all the way around. All right, I think that's probably loose enough that we can move to the next one. I really want to try not to break these tabs off because that's going to jeopardize the integrity of the housing when I go to put it back together. So there, it's really starting to separate. I expected that to be much harder than it was. This housing, this plastic that it's made of, is not old enough yet that it's just super brittle. So that is probably aiding me in being able to get this apart without breaking everything. All right, so maybe this is the last one. Maybe there's not really anything under here. Looks like there's maybe not. Wow, that was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. So you can see we've got this half here. In this half, there's really not anything special. It's just straight plastic housing. So all of the real guts are in this half over here. So we've got a plastic fan, got a plastic housing. Let's see here, and there's a metal shaft. That's probably some kind of pressed metal fit, or pressed metal to plastic deal there, where the axle of the fan or the shaft of the fan meets the actual fan itself. As you can see down here, we've got sort of a motor control board. That's what I was mentioning earlier. It's direct opposite here. So let's see where the wires go to the actual fan itself. That is very interesting. Let me get a pair of cutters and we'll snip that zip tie off. We'll take this off and see what we got there. All right, gonna snip this baby off. Also grabbed a pair of needle nose. I think we're probably gonna need those here in a minute. All right, so there's no other connections there, just that one zip tie. All right, I'm gonna see if we can get this board off. One little screw. Two little screws. All right, now this thing. Ah, there we go. I see now. I don't really want to yank on this. All right, so we've got power running from, so we get a yellow, a red, and an orange. Is the orange, see, yellow's minimum, max is orange, and medium is red. Okay, so let's see if we can pop these off without breaking anything. These things are, in fact, feeling a little bit brittle. Maybe we can get them off without breaking anything. There we go. That's coming. All right, so there's the first one. Maybe let's go for this one next. Not too bad. All right, so there we go. All right, so we got a black running in here, which is our ground. Our orange runs to the fan motor itself. All right. So there's not much to this little unit here. Just, I guess, 4 spades. This is some kind of cover. I'm not exactly sure what that is. For sure, probably not going to take it off because I don't want to risk breaking something if it's, well, I don't know. Oh. Feels pretty, it's on there pretty good. I don't know if that's some kind of resistor or what that is, but I'm not going to pull it off for risk of breaking something that's not already broken. All right, so I'll set this aside. I'll clean this up, blow it out good, and we'll have it put back on. All right, so now, let's see here. Looks like we're going to have to, let's see if we, looks like these 2 screws here run all the way through the housing and into the motor. So I'm guessing that if we back these off, take them out, we'll be able to pop the spade off of here, the spade off of right here, and then pop the spade off of the ground. And then we'll be able to get the whole thing out. We'll see how we go. So there's one. There's 2. Okay, and so that separated the motor and the fan housing. Now we'll have to, so there's an orange. I guess it's kind of hard to show you guys that, but okay, so right here is where the orange wire is attached to. Let's see if I can pop that off. Easy peasy. Over here is where the ground is attached to. Pop that baby off. Also easy peasy. And now we can separate the motor and the fan from the housing. Now what I'll do with this housing, off camera, because I don't figure you guys probably want to watch, but I'm going to take this housing and I'm going to take it out and I'll wash it good, get everything cleaned up, get the wires cleaned up, and we'll be ready to put it back together. But first, I want to see how far. First, I'm going to try to get these things out. Thinking I'm going to have to. Yeah, you just got to, they'll fit through there. You just got to kind of hold your mouth just right. Just like that. All right. So there we go. We got 2 halves. We got a wiring harness. Got the screws out. We've got our little controller board. We got a gasket that does have some adhesive on one side. And now we got our motor and fan assembly. All right, so the way it was oriented, this would have been the ground. This would have been the orange power. Not quite sure. Can still hear that squeaking sound. So I don't know if this thing has got bearings or bushings in it, but we're going to find out. Tell you what I'm going to do next. I'm gonna pop this little ring off. This is just like a little retention ring. It's sort of just like a little concaved. It's like a permanent snap ring, I guess I would call it. Semi-permanent snap ring, more permanent snap ring. It's got these little tabs. I don't know if you can see these little. It's got these little tabs that run all the way around it, and they snap into a groove like a snap ring would. But these are meant so that they're not really easy to take off. You'll find these a lot on things that aren't meant to be rebuilt. Like if this was meant to be built, it would have had a snap ring on it. But since it's not really meant to be rebuilt, then they put these little jobbies on here. Just because it's not meant to be rebuilt doesn't mean I'm not going to try to rebuild it though. At the same time, I don't want to tear any of the other parts up. There we go. So I bent this up a little bit, but I've got a snap ring kit or a C-clip kit. There you can see those a little bit better. Those little tabs that fit down in the groove. Let's see. So we've got the housing spinning, or the motor itself spinning. This little off-white plastic ring here, though, that is not spinning. That is probably shrink fitted to the shaft. Let me get a Phillips screwdriver, and we'll take these two screws out and try to pull that off and see what's underneath there. All right, back with my little shorty Phillips screwdriver here. We'll see if we can pull these out without stripping them. They're a little tight, but they're not bad. Kind of hard to hold on to this thing. I really despise Phillips screws. I don't know why they were so prevalent for so long, because I really despise them. So that's not doing much. That is getting looser, but it's not getting looser. So kind of wondering if maybe this is a through screw and goes all the way to the other side, and it's got a nut on the end or something. So what are my next options? What are the options? I could heat this up and see if I could slide it off the axle, or the motor shaft, which is the brown part here. All right, I'm back, and so that was easier than I thought it would be as well. I got it apart. Turns out all it is it's just a press fit. It's just a press fit onto the shaft. All I had to do, I took it over to my vise. I just opened up my vise enough to where the fan would sit across the jaws. I used my hammer and my punch, just use a little punch, and just very gently, I just tapped until it started to move. Didn't take much force at all. One thing you really got to do is, if you do this, you got to be careful. You can't hit it too hard because you'll break obviously this fan's plastic and it's fairly brittle. And so if you hit it too hard, you'll break this. But anyways, worked out really well. Came off pretty easy. Pretty happy with that. I'll be able to take that, clean it up good, make sure it's all balanced good and everything. There are some grooves on this shaft that I'm sure that's what keeps the fan from spinning on the shaft. There's just some small grooves here that bite into the plastic when it goes back on. So that was pretty easy, really, a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. And as I sort of suspected, looks like these true screws, they are through screws, and got some nuts here on the other side. So I'm guessing this is a bearing in here, and this is going to be a bearing in here. I suspect that is going to be the case. So, all right, let's pull these nuts off, and we'll see what we've got. Let me go find. Actually, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this out, and I'm going to brush this a little bit, clean this up a little bit outside the shop, and then once it's clean, we'll come back and we'll continue the disassembly of the motor. All right, and we're back. So took it out, gave it a good brushing with a wire brush, hit it with some compressed air, and it looks quite a bit better now. I am going to go ahead, well, I mean, I've got to because I got to get to these bearings. We're going to go ahead and disassemble it, and then if I can blow it out, clean it up further once it's more disassembled, then we'll do that. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of these two nuts right here, and I've got just a nut driver. Let's see, this is a 7mm that fits these. They're going to come off nice and easy, no problem. So it's just a nut and no lock washer. Not super tight, don't even need a screwdriver on the other end. For the inquiring minds that really want to know the numbers on this motor, it's a A70 27012 with a plus sign, and then there's what I'm guessing is probably the part number. So if anybody wants to know. And I did see that on a clip right here, it's a SPAL. So I guess they make the motor and the fan assembly, either that or they had somebody else make the motor specifically for them. So anyways, that's where we're at. Now what I don't know, there's the screw, there's another screw. This almost, I don't know, I hope not. This almost looks like maybe this housing is rolled over these ends. I hope that's not the case, because that'll make this a lot harder to get apart. Ooh, that might make it hard to get apart too. So it looks like this side is loose. However, if you'll remember, I mentioned that there were some, they're not splines, but they're impressions in the shaft that were probably made after this bearing housing was slid over the shaft. They're impressions in the shaft that are probably going to make it difficult to get this bearing housing off. Wouldn't be surprised if that's not quite difficult. How about this end? Is this end going to come off somewhat easily? Feels like maybe it will. It's not, feels like it's kind of coming. What do we got here? What do we got inside here? I don't know if that's also just sort of a press I could put it in the camera view. Sorry guys, this is kind of my first YouTube video. I'm not a professional. Wonder if I just held this up and kind of, may have to take this back over to my bench vise again. If I had 3 hands, I could hold this, hold the punch, and hit it with the hammer, but you know, I'm just a normal guy with 2 hands, so. What are we gonna do here? I don't want to misshape. I don't want to pry too hard on this flange part of this bearing carrier because I don't want to bend anything. If I can absolutely keep from it. Let's see. I wonder if I could do one of these numbers. Oh, where's my hammer? Ah, it's over here. All right, I had to grab my hammer. All right, holding the flange with my pinky and my thumb, holding the punch with my index finger, my middle finger. I think we're having some success. I do believe we've lost the little, yep. So the little plastic bushing is off. There is the, you can see now, the shaft and the bearing. Let's keep going. See what we can do here. It's kind of hard to do. Tell you what I'm going to do. You guys got the gist. I'm going to take this over to my vise and I'm going to go ahead and get this baby off. And I'll be back. All right, everybody, we're back with more success. I was able to get this bearing housing, bearing flange, whatever you want to call it. I was able to get that off without much drama. I just needed another hand or a vise in whichever case to go ahead and get it off. Now I've discovered this is pretty interesting. What I thought were 2 bearings is actually a bearing. So this is the end that had the little clip on it. This was the end that we could see from the very first start of the video. And if I push this on just a little bit onto the shaft, we can see that this bearing is actually pretty good. It's pretty smooth. I don't think that this is the issue. It feels good when you spin it. It spins for a long time. As I hold the whole thing in my hand, I don't really feel any rough spots in the bearing. So I think that this bearing is going to be okay. I will take this whole thing out and I will clean it up. I can see the number on the bearing. I'll get that number and I'll write it down. I'll make a note of it somewhere, and I'll keep that for future reference. But as far as this assembly goes, I am not going to actually take the bearing out of the flange. I'm just going to clean up this whole assembly here, and we'll put it back on when we go to reassemble. So I believe that I have found the culprit for my noise and my lack of free spinning. So what I thought was another bearing on this end, and you remember this is the end of the shaft that the fan connected to, so it would have been here, right? So what I thought was a bearing is in fact if you guys, let me see if I can adjust my light so you guys can really see down in there. So what this is, in fact, is a spherical bronze bushing. And this bronze bushing is what was causing the problem. Because there's a certain place that I can get this bushing in, and it doesn't want to spin freely. It doesn't want to spin smoothly. It is very, very grimy, very, very dirty in there. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to do my dead level best to get this whole thing cleaned up without taking the bronze bushing off the end of the shaft, because you can see here, this is what I keep talking about, these little, I don't know what you'd call it. Like I said, it's not a spline. It's just an upset in the shaft that was made so that the shaft would grip the plastic, or I guess the plastic would grip the shaft. Rather, it's not a precision thing. It's just it's basically just a handful of dents in the shaft that transmit the torque to the fan. So, but I think that if I try to get the bronze bushing off of the shaft this way, I'm going to have a lot of issues. This flange is like the other one. It's just made of sheet metal, and I think I'm just going to have a lot of issues. I'm going to bend a lot of things, and it's just not going to be good for my overall result in the end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave all of this together, and I'm just going to clean it up as best I can and move forward. So the part of the motor here, and guys, I'm not a motor expert. I'm not an electrician, so I guess maybe this is the rotor. This is the part that the brushes run on. Okay, I didn't brush up on my electric motor vocabulary before I started this video, so you just got to bear with me. But this is the part here where the brushes run on, and it looks pretty decent. I mean, it's definitely grooved, but it's not what I would consider probably worn out. Everything else looks to be in pretty good shape, other than it just being very dirty. So I'm going to get this cleaned up, get all the dust and the dirt and everything blown out of it. There's another little plastic spacer here that goes on. Remove that, get that cleaned up, and so that's my plan for this part. Here is the housing for the motor itself. These little guys right here, these are your brushes, two brushes. So they actually look pretty good. As we can flip it over and see here the inside, there's still quite a lot of brush material left. Again, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to really try not to mess these brushes up, but I am going to do my best to get all of this dust, there's just so much dust, out of this motor housing and get it cleaned up so we can reassemble. So at this point, here's kind of show you again what we've got, everything together, the fan, the rotor part of the motor, the flange with the bronze bushing in it, the little clip that goes on the end of the shaft. We've got the motor housing itself with the bushings and wiring still intact. We've got our pigtail that connects to the machine itself. We've got a seal, got one half the housing, other half the housing, motor controller. We've got the flange that's got the bearing in it. And then there you can see we've got our long screws and nuts go all the way through. Got a couple of plastic spacers that go through go on the bearing end of the shaft. Got a zip tie we'll have to replace, 2 long screws and 2 short screws. And that's pretty much it right there. So what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to go through all this stuff, get it cleaned up and lubed up the best that I can, and I'll check back with you guys once I have that all done and we're ready to reassemble. Alright folks, so we're back here. As you can see, we've got some parts that are quite a bit cleaner than they were before. Everything cleaned up pretty good. I managed so far to not break anything, like the fan, while I was cleaning it up. The brushes look pretty good inside the housing here. Some of the stuff I washed. Obviously, some of the pieces like the armature and the housing and all, I just used a brush and some compressed air, got them cleaned out good. This bearing is still in good shape. I don't think that there's any problem with this at all, so I'm not going to worry about changing that at the moment. Just in case I ever do, The part number for it is 608 LUV, and then there's a CW here on this side. So as I mentioned before, I think the problem that I had is this bushing. Now this bushing is just a bronze bushing here. It's got a helical exterior, not a helical, but a spherical exterior here that lets it allow for a little bit of misalignment, but it is not really running smooth on the shaft. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take just a tiny little bit of some grease here that I have on a zip tie. I'm going to put a little bit of grease on it, and I'm just going to work it around some. Now I don't want to use a bunch of grease, because grease is just going to attract dirt, and I plan on keeping this a whole lot cleaner than the previous owners did. So I can get it up here so you can kind of see where I put the grease. Put the grease right in there. Just going to kind of spin it around some. I'll get any excess cleaned off before I put it back together, but as you can see, that feels and sounds and looks already just light years better than it was. I'm just going to work it around a little bit, try to get as much in all the little nooks and crannies, make sure everything's coated well. But I don't want to use too much, because again, even though I plan on making sure my filters stay clean and my filters stay intact, I still don't want to give this any more opportunity to attract dirt than absolutely necessary. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put just a little bit more here and just work this around some, and then if I need to clean the excess off, I will. That's already just so much better and so much smoother than it was before. That's going to be much, much better. Okay. I'll clean this off here, clean the excess off here a little bit, and then we'll carry on with the reassembly. Yeah, feels good. All right, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to try to get this back in there. Now these brushes are in the way, so we're going to have to finagle them in, and it's always fun because these gray pieces right here are magnets, and so the whole time you're trying to push this through, it's wanting to stick to the sides. But we'll see if we can get it started kind of halfway straight down in there, and then we'll move the brushes to the side with a screwdriver here. So sometimes these brushes, there'll be little holes where you can capture them with a piece of wire or something to aid in reassembly. I didn't see anything like that on these, so just going to kind of try to get them sort of stuck in where they go, and then just try to work it around, just kind of like so. All right, so there we go. Everything is more or less back here on the back where it needs to go. We'll get these lined up exactly right here just in a minute. All right, so we got everything put back together in there. Our brushes are back in where they're supposed to be. Now what we're going to do is, before we forget, we need to slide our little black spacer back on here real quick. There we go. Now we're going to go ahead and put our bearing flange or our bearing mount on. And when we put this on, our through bolts are going to go here and here. And so we need to make sure that we have this oriented such that we have our through bolts in the correct place and our spades are allowed to show through. I think should just be able to kind of maneuver this around and get it on there, I do believe. All right, there we go. I'm back. I just had to get a, well, it looks like I used a 11/32 socket. Just set it down in there, gave it a tap with a hammer, and it went right in to where it was supposed to be. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and install our through bolts. Drop one in here, lined up here on the back. There we go. Put the other one in. There we go. Now, just got to put our little nuts on back here. Do believe these were 7mm. There we go. And I'll back it up with a Phillips. And I'm not going to go crazy tight on these. They just need to be tight enough. I don't want to warp the bearing carriers or anything like that, or whatever. That is already feeling a lot smoother and even sounds a lot better. All right, so next, this spacer is going to go on right on the end of here. And then we'll need space for our space for our keeper to go back on. And we'll go right there on the end. All right, so I just used a socket over on my vise to kind of straighten this out again. That kind of straightened the all the little, you can see there, all the little prongs or all the little keepers. Just kind of straightened those out as best I could, and we'll see if we can slip this back on here. I may need to grab my, it was 11/32 socket again. Probably what I'll do is I'll grab that and I'll just go over to my vise and I'll just kind of drive this, drive the little keeper over the shaft. Be right back. All right, well, I can tell you that putting this little dude back on, this little keeper dude back on, was about as much fun as a lot of you probably expected it to be. Remember that one time when you were trying to put that spring retainer thing back on and you tapped it with the hammer and it flew across the shop and you heard it but you didn't see it, so then you spent the next 30 minutes trying to find it again? Yeah, that sort of a thing just happened. So anyways, in hindsight, probably what I would have done is just when I had this thing fully disassembled, chucked it up in the lathe and just spun a little groove so I could either put a C-clip in or a spring clip, circlip. That's probably what I would have done. But it's on there. I don't believe it's going to come back off, and we're just going to move forward. All right, so if I recall, the next thing that we need to do is we need to put the fan back on the unit. Just before we do that, I'm going to try to think back and make sure we did everything. Let's see, as far as spare parts goes, what I have left, got 2 little screws. I know what those are for. I got 2 longer screws. I know what those are for. So we are going to go ahead and, I think, move forward. Now, this fan was just on kind of a press fit. And so all I'm really going to have to do here, I believe, is just get this thing started in the right direction and push it back through. And the end of the shaft was just flush with the end of the fan here. So I'm going to go do that real quick over here at the vise, and I will be right back. All right, there we go. Our fan's back installed. It's just, again, the shaft is flush with the end of the fan here. And we're ready to move on to the next step, which, if memory serves me correctly, would be putting this dude back together and running our wires for our ground and our orange wire through the front here. So I made a little mark, or a couple of little marks, I guess. So our black is going to go right through here. Our orange is going to go right through here. So our black and our orange, just going to kind of shove that in and work it around. That orange, going to do the same thing, just going to kind of shove it in and just sort of angle it around so it pops through. There we go. Our plugs will go right here once we put our controller back in. But let's go ahead and get this reinstalled. Get our wires put back on. Now this might be kind of tricky because I used a screwdriver to pop these loose a little while ago. So this might be pretty tricky. I have a feeling when they made this, they probably put the wires in there and then connected them outside. Let's see here. Oh, pretty sure it goes like that. Let's see. Trying to kind of keep this in view of the camera, and at the same time trying to get this done. May have to sacrifice not showing it on camera to be able to get it done, but we'll see. Not sure if you can actually see what's going on anyways. All right, so after a little bit of messing around, I was able to get those two back on there. In hindsight, I think probably what I should have done is, before I put the fan on to the motor shaft, probably should have hooked those wires up, and then after I got those hooked up and ready to go, I could have easily put the fan on, and I would have had a lot more room to manipulate this motor and move it around to a better orientation to get it those two wires put back on. But I got them on, so let's go ahead. These two screws are going to go back in. They're the T15s. So let's go ahead, get those screwed back in before we mess around and pull those wires back out. All right, there we go. And now we're going to put our controller back in. Let's go right there. Got our little Torx here, which is a T10, I believe. Yep. right. Here we go. Let's see here. I'm gonna have to look back real quick at my video to check the proper orientation of the wires. Be right back. All right, so it turns out it's yellow, orange, red. So we're gonna put, actually, I think what I'll do is pull the yellow back through here. Yep. So yellow on here. We got orange right here in the middle. And then we got red right here on the outside. All right, I'm gonna go grab a zip tie. Actually, no, I'll tell you what, we will go ahead and we'll snap this case back together. Then we'll go grab the zip tie. So this should just go, with any luck, this should just kind of snap back together. Just about like that. All the way around. That's it. Let me grab a zip tie and we will see how she goes. All right, there we go. Got her all zip tied back together, hooked back up. Now let's take it back out to the machine and see if when we hook it up, turn it on, if it actually works and sounds any better than it did. All right, well, you guys will have to excuse the wind because it's blowing like crazy here today, but we've got our fan back in the machine. Got it all hooked back up to the harness. I've got the key switch on, so I'm going to turn on the fan switch. We'll see how it looks and sounds. So there is the low speed, and I can tell you already that thing is spinning so much better, sounding so much better. Actually, even on low, it's putting out a lot of air. Crank it up a little bit and see what we think. So there's medium, and there's high. All right, so there is, I'm going to call that a win. I'm going to call that success. You know, that's that was really quite a bit easier than I thought it was going to be. You know, a lot of times anymore, these pieces like this, like these fans or whatever, they're not assembled to be able to be taken apart. And I was pleasantly surprised that this fan appears to be completely serviceable. You know, even if I had needed to change that bearing, I don't think it would have been that big of a deal. Probably would have found that bearing just about anywhere in town. So this was kind of a preemptive video. I wasn't really planning on videoing this. I'm not really a YouTuber, but I haven't owned this machine, this JCB 260T. Haven't owned it for very long. The folks who had it before me, like I said before, they really weren't much for preventative maintenance. So there's a lot of things that need to be worked on. And so what I'm thinking is that, you know, if I'll put this out there, if anybody finds value in it, I'll maybe make some more. If somebody has a machine that's similar to mine and has a problem with it and would like for me to look into it, I'd be willing to do that, because chances are I may need to fix it on my machine too. So if you guys found value in this, and if you're still watching, I know it was probably a long video, but it's what it is. If you found value, give it a like. If you want to comment, give me a comment. If there's, like I said, if there's something on your machine that you would like me to look into, put it in the comment. What I found with these JCB machines is that there's a few videos out there of people, operating them, moving things around, kind of giving basic reviews. But as far as fixing things and taking things apart and reassembling things and rebuilding things, there's not really much out there for these JCB machines. So if there is something you want to see, just drop in a comment. All right, guys. Thanks.